Well, I'm sure all of you are aware that last Tuesday we had the 175th anniversary of 1844. It's not something to rejoice over, I don't think, because we shouldn't have been here this long. But nonetheless, it is a reminder, because I don't know that we think enough about what's going on up in the most holy place. But having an anniversary kind of brings it to our mind again, if we don't forget it. I spoke 2 places and asked the audience how many of them remembered that it was the anniversary, and about half of the congregation held up their hands. So that shows that actually it's being forgotten to a large extent, and even by conservative people. It was conservative people I was asking the question to. But I would like to give a series here for our week of prayer on the most holy place. And the question we're going to look at tonight is, in view of what's going on in the most holy place, how should we be living? First, we'll look at the text that we know points to the beginning of it in Daniel 7, verses 9 and 10. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. So Daniel actually saw in vision the beginning of the investigative judgment. He saw those thrones placed where they had to be moved from the holy place into the most holy place. He saw them put there, and he saw all the angels gather around like a big jury that we're going to listen to the evidence given in regard to all the people, starting with Adam, all the way down to the living. And I've been studying some because a book was given me that supposedly was New Light. So I've been studying quite a bit about this, and in the book he's suggesting, and I think he may be right, that God doesn't deal with the living until the latter rain. But we do expect the latter rain to begin soon, and so we're not too far off from when our names will be looked at, if that theory is right. In Revelation, we have a reference to this as well. Chapter 3, verse 7. These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David. And that's Jesus, of course. He that openeth, and no man shutteth. And shutteth, and no man openeth. So here, John sees the time when Jesus shuts the door of the holy place and opens the door to the most holy, and he is told that when that holy place door is shut, nobody's going to be able to open it. And of course, human beings that are not listening to the Lord try to open that door, but they can't open it because he shut it. On the other hand, many human beings don't like the fact that the door was open to the most holy place, and so they would like to shut that, but they cannot. Jesus will not allow the holy place to be open or the most holy place to be closed. So then we know that even though it's been 175 years, that he's still working there in the most holy place. Now there was another vision given to Ellen White that has a lot more detail, and any of you that were at Vespers, you heard it already, but those that weren't at Vespers, I'll read it again. I won't spend as much time on it, but before the throne, this comes from early writings, before the throne I saw the Advent people. This is referring to the Millerites, those that had accepted the idea that Jesus was coming. They didn't know yet that the door of the most holy place was going to be opened. Also, the church and the world. So, three groups of people were seen at first. I saw two companies. One bowed down before the throne and deeply interested, while the other stood uninterested and careless. So I'm assuming that that is speaking about the Advent people, because by the time that we're reading about here, the churches at large had rejected the message of the Millerites, and of course the careless, the world, they wouldn't care, they wouldn't be interested. So now we divide the ones that supposedly are looking for the coming of Jesus, and we have two groups. Those who were bowed before the throne would offer up their prayers and look to Jesus. Then he would look to his Father and appear to be pleading with him. A light would come from the Father to the Son, and from the Son to the praying company. Now the light didn't come to the others, but to the praying company the light came. Then I saw an exceeding bright light come from the Father to the Son. Now if you check this out, sequentially, this exceeding bright light was the midnight cry. The second angel started and went for a period of time, and then the midnight cry started, and it went to October 22, 1844. So this was an exceeding bright light, and by the way, we are told that this parable of the virgins, see, that's what the midnight cry said. Behold, the bridegroom is coming. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. That exact same message is to be given again under the latter rain. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. So it was a forecast of the bright light that's coming. But few would receive this great light. Many came out from under it and immediately resisted it. So that's a sad part, that many of them didn't like the midnight cry. They resisted it. Others were careless, so they didn't really care about it and did not cherish the light, and it moved off from them. Here's another small group. Some cherished it and went and bowed down with the little praying company. So this little praying company that God could reveal the exceeding bright light to was joined by a few more who at first weren't too interested in the truth, but they became interested and joined them. This company all received the light and rejoiced in it, and their countenances shone with its glory. So this is the group now that is able to give the midnight cry and the message, behold, the bridegroom cometh. Now she sees what happens at the end of the midnight cry. I saw the Father rise from the throne and a flaming chariot go into the Holy of Holies within the veil and sit down. Then Jesus rose up from the throne, and the most of those who were bowed down arose with him. Not all, but most of the ones that were bowed down rose up too. I did not see one ray of light pass from Jesus to the careless multitude after he arose. You see, they had rejected the light, and once a person rejects the light, they don't get any more light. Now, you can not understand the light, and God will keep helping you. He doesn't give up easily. But once a person turns their back and actually rejects light, then he can't help them anymore. Because light is advancing, one step at a time. And they were left in perfect darkness. Those who arose when Jesus did kept their eyes fixed on him as he left the throne and led them out a little way. Then he raised his right arm, and we heard his lovely voice saying, "Wait here. I am going to my Father to receive the kingdom." Now here's a special instruction. And it started in a special way in 1844, and it is to keep on going until Jesus comes, or until probation closes and Jesus comes. Keep your garments spotless. Now, how do we keep them spotless? We still slip and do wrong, and we sin. But through confession and forsaking of that sin, we can keep our garments spotless. Now, when the work closes in the most holy place, is different. We can't sin then, because there's no forgiveness available after the close of probation. So the main work that we have right now is to keep our robes spotless by confessing every sin. If we hurt a brother or sister, to confess to them, confess to God. When we don't hurt anybody particular, but we sin, we have to confess it to God. It's not a time when we can just go on and not get the sins that we do corrected. And I'm afraid many Seventh-day Adventists, that's the way they're living their life. They even get to where they don't notice that they have sinned because they're just not trying to keep spotless. And so that's too dangerous right now for us to go like that. Keep your garments spotless, and in a little while I will return from the wedding and receive you to myself. Now, the reason it says that is because when the close of probation comes, the wedding occurs. And all those who pass the judgment are married to Christ. And so when he comes back to earth, he's returning from the wedding, which took place up there. Then a cloudy chariot with wheels like flaming fire, surrounded by angels, came to where Jesus was. He stepped into the chariot and was borne to the holiest, where the Father sat. There I beheld Jesus, the great high priest, standing before the Father. So here she actually witnesses, first of all, the Father moving into the most holy place, and then Jesus moving into the most holy place, and he's entering into his final work of atonement. There are two phrases that tell us different things, but they are very important. One is the Day of Atonement. So this is, since 1844, it's the final atonement. Also, the Bible talks about the cleansing of the sanctuary. And so the sanctuary has to be cleansed before Jesus comes back. When our sins go in, it makes the sanctuary dirty. And that has to be cleaned. He has to get those sins out of there. And that's the work that's going on right now. Next, in view of all this, well, here's a little bit more on this. On the hem of his garment was a bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate. That is an interesting statement that she would mention that, because it shows how exact the earthly sanctuary was in comparison to the heavenly. That Jesus even wore garments with a bell and a pomegranate on it, just like Aaron wore. Those who rose up with Jesus would send up their faith to him in the holiest and pray, "My Father, give us thy Spirit." Then Jesus would breathe upon them the Holy Ghost. In that breath was light, power, and much love, joy, and peace. So here are some gifts from the most holy place. And I don't believe that he stopped giving those gifts just to the founders of this church. He's interested in giving those same gifts to us. But the question is, are we interested in those gifts? And the ones that it mentions is light. We unfortunately have not discovered all of the truth of the Bible or the writings of Ellen White. And so there is a desire that Jesus has from the most holy place to give us the rest of the light. Every bit of light helps us to be more successful in getting ready when the most holy place closes. But if we lack some light, it makes it harder, or maybe even prevents it from happening. So then, during the most holy place time, going after light is a very important thing for us, to find all the light that we can find. Then, of course, there's power. And we need power to conquer sin. We need power to share the gospel. And he wants us to remember that we have power. If we're interested in it, we have power to conquer sin, and we have power to share the gospel. And then the result of all that, those two things on us, puts a lot of love in our heart, love for each other, love for those that don't have the light, puts a lot of love in there. And it's a joyful experience, and it's a peaceful experience. The two things that everybody in this world would like to have, that's what we can have, a life of joy and a life of peace, because of these gifts that are coming from the most holy place. I turned to look at the company, who were still bowed before the throne. They did not know that Jesus had left it. So obviously these are Christian people, but they were praying to the wrong place. They did not realize that Jesus had transferred into the most holy place. Now, we know that he moved into the most holy place. But are we living like he was still in the holy place and not in the most holy? I think many are. I hope none here are. But it's really important to live in the way that we should while he's in the most holy place. They did not know that Jesus had left it. Satan appeared to be by the throne. Now, many criticize Adventists. They say, oh, Ellen White said Satan was up in heaven. The word appeared is an important word. He wasn't up in heaven. He can't go to heaven after the cross. So he's not up in heaven, but in vision, God shows in symbols to teach a lesson. And so Satan appeared to be by the throne, trying to carry on the work of God. I saw them look up to the throne and pray, Father, give us thy Spirit. Satan would then breathe upon them an unholy influence. In it, there was light and much power. Now, it uses the word light, but I don't know that it's real light. But it appears to be light. And it gets them all excited. And they think that they've really been given something by God. And so light, and Satan can give power also, but it says, but no sweet love, joy, and peace. So they couldn't get those things. But they did get something. And in this lecture, I did not put in the last sentence, but many Seventh-day Adventists are going to get fooled by the light and power that the Protestants get and the Catholics get. And it's going to look like God is really working with them. We need to be careful about that because it's the work of the enemy. If you read in Great Controversy, the chapter on the false revival, how the false revival comes before the true revival, and the false revival is going to trip up a lot of people. And I know from listening to one pastor, at least, who was a pastor of a Celebration church, he got fooled. He said, we need to go to the Pentecostals to get power. He says, Adventists have the truth, but they have the power. That's where we need to go to get it. And so I expect that he's going to trip up a lot of people and others. It's the same principle as kneeling, praying to the holy place when we're supposed to be praying to the most holy place. In CET 100, it says, I saw that Jesus would not leave the most holy place until every case was decided. Now, to me, that's a very encouraging thing. He's not going to close it down when you're half ready or 3/4 ready to, have your name decided upon. He waits until everyone has become like him or like Satan. When every case is decided, either for salvation or destruction, and that the wrath of God could not come until Jesus had finished his work in the most holy place, laid off his priestly attire, and clothed himself with the garments of vengeance. So we can have assurance that the reason he's waiting so long, it wouldn't take him that long, 175 years, to finish the work, but he's waiting for the people they're getting ready, but they're not doing it fast enough, and he can't really finish it up until their case is decided one way or the other. So I believe that this should put in our hearts an urgency. Now, whenever we focus on some of these things, certain ones tend to get discouraged because they feel like their progress is too slow, that they've got too many faults, And so they get discouraged, and some people don't even want to hear a message like this because it depresses them. But that was not the purpose of this message. The purpose was to say, I have all the help that it takes to get you ready, but I can't get you ready if you're not interested and you're not recognizing the work that needs to be done on your part to get ready. And so those that are willing to go for it, you might say, to say, yes, I want to make it, and I'm going to focus on this and make sure that my sins are taken care of when they happen. Early Writings 42, since Jesus has opened the door into the most holy place, which contains the ark, the commandments have been shining out to God's people, and they are being tested on the Sabbath question. As we see, one of the things that is very important right now, it's the Sabbath. Now, I believe it's not only the idea that the Sabbath is the day of worship, but it's how we keep the Sabbath. That we need to recognize that when we're living in the time of the most holy place, we need to make sure that the Sabbath is kept and taught and so on. Here's an interesting one from Early Writings 42 and 3. I saw that the present test on the Sabbath could not come until the mediation of Jesus in the holy place was finished, and he had passed within the second veil. So in the past, before 1844, people kept Sunday. It was not a big issue. But after 1844, it is a big issue. And it is a test question. Every person that has had any light, now, God is merciful, and there's lots of people in the world that never heard about the Sabbath, so I'm sure God is merciful to them. But when the message is preached about the Sabbath and people don't see the value of it and follow it, that is a very dangerous path for them, because it's a test question. And it's interesting how Satan is putting forth so much effort to try to have rationale why the Sabbath is not important. He's trying to convince all the people that it can't matter very much. But the message from the most holy place is it really does matter. Therefore, Christians who fell asleep before the door was opened into the most holy, when the midnight cry was finished at the 7th month, 1844, and who had not kept the true Sabbath, now rest in hope, for they had not the light and the test on the Sabbath, which we now have since that door was opened. I saw that Satan was tempting some of God's people on this point. Because so many good Christians have fallen asleep in the triumphs of faith and have not kept the true Sabbath, they were doubting about its being a test for us now. Now, I think we've pretty well passed that as far as the attitude of Seventh-day Adventists. But I see also a failure to really keep the Sabbath as God said we should keep it. Early Writings 43, the enemies of the present truth have been trying to open the door of the holy place that Jesus has shut, and to close the door of the most holy place which he opened in 1844. Where the ark is, containing the 2 tables of stone, on which are written the 10 Commandments by the finger of God. Now, I want to suggest a few habits that I believe we need to develop fully. First one is attending Sabbath school. I've mentioned this before, but I really believe that everyone that goes to church should be in Sabbath school. And if we're too tired to come to Sabbath school, it means we're doing too much during the week. And that's why we're that tired. And so this is a habit, especially during the Most Holy Place time. We should make sure that that habit gets established. Now I realize there are on occasions, circumstances that hinder, but that should be our general practice. Number 2, attending prayer meeting. Since we're in the Most Holy Place time, we've got to take advantage of every opportunity we have to grow spiritually and to kind of encourage each other in the Christian life. Number 3, to not do things on Sabbath that could be done beforehand or after. That's the proper Sabbath keeping principle. Anything that can't be done any other time is appropriate for Sabbath, but if it can be done beforehand or it can be done afterward, that we do that so that we have some time for study and prayer, and not just go through the Sabbath and we got maybe Sabbath school in church, but there's more that we should get. And time in nature also is a valuable experience. Another one is to keep our thoughts on spiritual things during the Sabbath. I find in many situations that I have been in my past life, that when you visit people on Sabbath, it's not very long until their mind is going on something else that's not Sabbath subject. It's kind of like, well, truth is not so valuable to us that we're glad to have some time that we can talk about it. And, this Sabbath I preached in Atlanta, and one of the things I really like about that church is that after the sermon's over, the men want to talk to me about the message that was given. And they want to, dig deeper into the truth that they understand. Now, probably most of you understand more than they do, so maybe I shouldn't expect it as much here. But it's interesting that they want to talk about spiritual things on Sabbath. And I believe that is the appropriate response when we are living in the most holy place time, because the Sabbath is a very big test question. Closing with this from Early Writings 43. Satan is now using every device in this sealing time to keep the minds of God's people from the present truth and to cause them to waver. So we have a very active enemy, and he is watching us carefully. He knows that the most holy place is going on, and he's determined to get us to where we fail during this time. I saw a covering that God was drawing over his people to protect them in the time of trouble. And every soul that was decided on the truth and was pure in heart was to be covered with the covering of the Almighty. And so he's working now. And that's connected with obedience. That as we become more and more obedient and we follow the lifestyle in every detail that he gave us to do, it makes it possible for him to protect us from the devil, which we desperately need, especially after the close of probation, but we need it even before.